Good afternoon. I'm Charles Harris, and I'm calling the Eastham Water Management Committee meeting together. It's 2 p.m. on the 9th of December. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that we were being recorded, and I think a live broadcast as well. So, I don't know if the gentleman who was here last month, Scott Lewis, will be coming in or not. I did send him a copy of the agenda. He expressed an interest in joining the committee. So, let's see, Jane, do you want to start off with your updates?
Sure. We, as discussed last meeting, are going to be slated for a public hearing with the Cape Cod Commission for the adoption of the fertilizer regulation. As required, it needs to go before the commission for adoption under the DCPC. So that is scheduled for December 18th at 3 o'clock. And I've been asked to testify, and anyone else that's interested is more than welcome to attend as well. We also have had a very busy month in terms of activities around the other environmental projects ongoing. The landfill consultants have done additional environmental assessments, and we are just now working our way through the data that has been received as the result of those temporary monitoring wells that were installed. What we're trying to do is develop a three-dimensional model that can give more clarity in terms of the extent and magnitude of the pollution plume, if you will, or what we're seeing impacted in residential wells. So that is work in progress. We had a joint meeting between our water consultants and the landfill consultants so that from the geology standpoint, everyone would have a clear picture of what we're seeing. And as that model becomes developed, that the work that's done by environmental strategies and management could be actually shared. Some of the surveying work and such that's been done will actually help support the development of the water system so that there's an opportunity for sharing of work and tasks already done so that it's not duplicated. So that was very productive. Also, I've been asked to go to the Orleans 208 water quality meetings, along with Sandy Bain has been the representative. I've been asked to join her in those discussions, and I know, Charles, you're the alternate and have been attending those meetings as well. So I did that last month. They're very long meetings. There's a lot of stakeholders in the town of Orleans that participate from different interests, and the town of Brewster has one representative, perhaps two, and Eastham as well. So as their plans start to take some shape, I think it's an opportunity for us to understand how we might work together to solve the watershed problem that we share. So that was followed. The meeting in Orleans, which, as I said, was held this month, was followed. That's very same day. We invited Mike Dominica, who's been working with the town of Orleans. He's a hired consultant to help facilitate the meetings and sort of streamline the approach of the environmental engineering company, Stantec, that they've hired to keep them on a project schedule to move all of these efforts forward in preparation for their town meeting. So we invited Mike as the representative of that project information to the Board of Selectmen workshop to sort of give an update of where Orleans was at this time, and also to discuss where Eastham was in wastewater planning and what next steps we might be heading towards. So I thought it's a lot of information to discuss in a very short period of time. The selectmen only had a limited opportunity on that agenda, so we did get started. We have some objectives in mind in terms of what we needed to provide to them at this point. And so the discussions are still ongoing. I think we're starting, and I think we're heading in a good direction. So that's pretty much wastewater, the landfill update, and the fertilizer update. I am heading to a Cape Cod Protection Collaborative meeting tomorrow, and I know you have interest in what that group will discuss in terms of the CLF litigation and settlement. So I will keep you informed when that comes up tomorrow. So. And also wanted to share with you, I did reach out to the town of Chatham. Last time we talked about pond remediation, the 2 projects that we've completed, but there was the ongoing discussion about shallow ponds and homeowner efforts. If in fact it wasn't funded through a town initiative or funding source, have other towns had privately funded remediations and pond treatments. And in fact, Chatham has had one experience with that. And so, I guess if that continues to be something that the homeowners association wants to pursue, clearly, I could try to gather more information from other towns on, just problems in terms of difficulties that they've encountered. But Chatham's experience was on Fox Pond. Homeowners, in fact, paid for that project. And
Jane, is that a public pond?
there's no public access, I don't believe.
Okay, so it would all be privately owned land then.
Yeah, that was privately funded. The project was, it was actually a removal of the vegetation, the weeds, I don't know if you'd call it dredging, but that type of activity. There was actually some disagreement internally with the Conservation Commission, and they actually rejected the project. It's a little kind of complicated how things never go according to plan, but the Conservation Commission initially did not approve the request, and the applicants went to DEP and got a superseding order of approval and did proceed with the project. So I think the outcome is we'll have to wait and see if it was a successful project, but it was a very shallow pond, and so there really wasn't internal support from the Conservation Committee, but they did in fact prevail in terms of getting approval from DEP, and they hired a consultant. The homeowners group hired a consultant that filed the report and such, and so there you have it.
Jane, do you know what year that was conducted?
It was just recently conducted.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and so
I think part of the concern, or at least the concern I expressed, was since Minister Schoolhouse are public ponds, what this town would require. Not so much what the experience has been, but I mean, would there be contractual issues, et cetera, come up because of the fact that there's still public access, and of course Schoolhouse, that's public land right there on the pond. So I'm wondering if
Okay.
maybe what we need to do is take the question up with Sheila or something.
Right, I agree.
Because I wouldn't want to, advise the homeowners, this looks like a good plan, unless we have some idea that the town would at least consider accepting their doing it, and what it was if they might require, so that those things are in place before.
And I know that the public access is there for Schoolhouse. Is Schoolhouse Ministers definitely one pond, or is it two ponds?
It's got,
It's
there's two
definitely
basins.
one pond. Okay. The Ministers couldn't be treated separately. I see.
No,
Okay.
there's nothing to interrupt the water flow, so.
Most of the time, yeah. A stuck canoe occasionally. That'll interrupt it, that's a dam.
So there's no reason we shouldn't promote it or support them. You can certainly tell them they need to go to the town to get permission, but
Well, I personally would not promote or support it unless I knew that this was something that the town would contemplate in terms of whatever they would consider to be their interests that had to be protected in it.
Yeah, I see it as a question that needs to be answered at this time. Right now, we're kind of in a holding category on Minister Schoolhouse Ponds. I'm waiting for myself to have some time to come up with a little more specific statement based on what I've found over the past year or so for, just kind of engineering type details as to what's there. Does anyone know the protocol for doing this type of thing? I guess it would be a town administrator type of a guidance statement, but do we just approach them as a committee, or?
There's no reason not to.
All right, well, since I'm the chair, is that for me and possibly you, Adele?
Okay,
We could just ask for some time.
right.
You have a good sense of the details, what, in terms of formalizing relationships between different parties.
Yeah, I think I have a sense of what the issue is, yes.
Okay, good.
Or what the issue might be, I should say.
So we do that in the next week or two? Does that fit?
Definitely not this week, that's for sure.
Okay.
And not until after the 16th.
After the 16th? huh?
Yeah. I don't know, when Sheila would have time. Yes, I'm certain the busy time for her too, so I know how quickly she
Yeah.
can get to this.
Well, I suppose it might help if we wrote an email that kind of laid out particular points and
Okay.
asked them if we could meet with her on that basis.
All right, I will draft something, but I won't get it done probably before Sunday.
Sure, I'm good. And to tell you the truth, if it slips past Christmas, I'm comfortable with that too. All right. Well, I see Sandy Bain has joined us, and Sandy and I talked, and we thought it would be helpful for you, the committee, to have more information as to what the Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel is doing, because they're meeting twice a month, and it's quite intense. See, in that direction, I'd have provided you as a handout a copy of the article that was in the 21st of November, Cape Codder, and the new group looks at common ground. I thought that was a pretty good summary of what's been going on, so that I provided you with a copy of it. And I also, let's see, I provide you with a copy of a draft summary from the person who Orleans has hired to basically moderate the meetings. And that's that Orleans Water Quality Advisory Panel Progress to Date document, the draft 5 November. It basically talks about the things that the group has already done, and then it talks a little bit more about where the group thinks it's going to be going.
Is this Stacy Smith, the person who drives
Stacy
it?
Smith, yes, yep. She's the one who is, I guess we might say she's sort of the people side moderator of the discussions, and her partner in that is Mike Dominica, and he handles the engineering type aspects. But Stacy's got good instincts as to how to guide a group, when to hold a discussion and when to pick it up. And I was also going to mention to you that I did go online, and I found Cape Cod Regional Wastewater Management Plan Status Local Planning. And I made a paper copy of it. I extracted it out. It was current as of March of 2013. I extracted it out yesterday. And the first part of it is just kind of a quick summary of where Orleans is with respect to their comprehensive wastewater management plan. And I think just to pick some numbers out of there, they were saying that they thought they needed to treat 0.64 million gallons per day of sewage, and that would be coming from 2,800 properties, and that would be serving 53% of the town. That's what their plan is talking about now, and it would take them 15 to 20 years to build. I think that's still a pretty good nutshell as to where they are. Let's see, I guess another number that they pull out there, it would cost them $150 million in '08 dollars to build what they're talking about there. And they were going to do it by both property tax, 80% and 20% on betterments.
I think a very significant number is the average cost to the homeowner, $2,600 per year. Makes our municipal water plan look like peanuts.
Yes.
Significant on current taxes.
Yes, but I was just glad to see, I've heard these numbers a little bit in meetings, never all together at the same time, and even though this ends up being a year and a half old, it's still pretty good. I guess they're in a position to have 0% loans because they have gone through the various processes that are required in this particular case. So, and down at the bottom on the back side of that, there's a little summary of where we are in Eastham. We've done a needs survey, but we haven't done something that would be a comprehensive wastewater management plan, which would be the thing that would put us in position to get inexpensive funding and that type of thing. Sandy?
I'm trying to remember. I thought at that workshop with the Board of Selectmen, Jane, didn't they refer to the 2009 Stearns and Wheeler plan as a CWMP?
It's not a CWMP. I would say it could be it's the beginning and it can be
Yeah.
built upon, but it's certainly doesn't meet all the criteria of a CWMP, and that wasn't really what we were trying to do at the time, but we can certainly build on it and refine it.
Yeah, but they were talking about, that was what
They were talking about it in those terms, but it
Yeah,
is
okay.
not technically,
Okay.
doesn't fit all the criteria that would be
Okay.
required.
Yeah, actually, perhaps we could loop back to that. I was also at that meeting when it was Mike Dominica and I believe it was Nate Weeks were present. And the subject was the what Eastham needs to do in relation to wastewater planning in respect to the fact that Orleans is holding these series of meetings. And I think, it was my understanding they got to Mike Domenica got to the point where he understood that the Board of Selectmen wanted him to come up with a figure that represented the waste sewage that Eastham would want to be sending to Orleans. He specifically said kilograms, which to me means how much pollutant, how much nitrate would be coming into the plant. I guess that's the way the engineers measure it off. And it was my understanding that he was then being asked to come up with that number.
Not the figure that we would want to send. What could they accept? Because they threw out the figure from the 2009 plan, which I forget what it was, 25,000 gallons a day or something like that. 250,000, okay. And he just like was shocked and said there was no way they could accommodate that. And so and then there was sort of a back and forth, sort of a little, after you, Alphonse. And what I think they were trying to get to was for him, or on behalf of Orleans, to tell them what Orleans believed it could accept, assuming it continued Tri-Town and continued to accept the flow and all of that. So
Those things are under discussion as we speak, so we're sharing information and working through that at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm sensing this might be a good point to have Sandy make some comments as to what the Orleans panel is doing, what they have done.
Well, first I gotta say, Charles and I are hanging on by our fingernails. It is extremely complex, and at any one time, there's about 8 or 9 different studies going on, which have to interlock in some way. It's like an amoeba, you don't know where to grab. Jane came to the last meeting, thank God, which is going to be a big help, I think. There are a lot of them, though, and the next one's 7 hours, so.
Yeah.
But up till that point, and I want to tell you about some emails I had with Mike Domenica after that meeting. This is what I gave to the selectmen in November
have that,
3rd.
Sandy.
You have that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Oh, shoot, I wasted paper.
Sandy, we talked about that at last meeting.
Oh, good. Okay.
Everybody had a paper
Sorry.
copy.
Good. So you've absorbed that, I guess, as much as any of us have. And this was part of it, so sorry, microphone. You've seen that.
Yeah.
This one is new.
The thing with the colored,
Oh,
you
this,
said this was part of your
yes, this was one
report?
of the attachments.
I don't think we got attachment.
Okay. And the back of it is, the front of it is the process they're going through. The back of it is the Stantec, their consultants, concept of what the proportions are between Eastham and Orleans in the Town Cove responsibility split. So that's Martin was really pleased to see 75-25%. But I'm not sure he was recognizing we were just talking about Town Cove, not Salt Pond, which is entirely our problem. But that's the initial idea.
Thank you.
I was talking with Mike on email since that meeting on Wednesday, and I told him that I had expected more from him in terms of what he said to the selectmen. And here are some of the things that I thought he might have talked about. And I was sad that he didn't. Some of the things we've heard at the meetings are the Orleans consultants have assumed that Eastham will use non-traditional methods, and we talked about what that is in here. Alternatives to sewering, and alternatives to standard septic systems. And IAs apparently fall in the middle, I found out today. Tri-Town, which is not particularly helpful. But for some reason, they,
The last thing you said, what falls in the middle?
IA systems,
Oh,
for some
they're
reason,
they're not non-traditional?
he said they fall in the middle, and it really will depend on which ones, perhaps.
So
I
when
don't
you-
know.
When they're assuming that we would use
Non-traditional.
non-traditional, that doesn't include IAs.
That's what I asked him, and that was the answer I got. So I wanted to know, what do you mean when you say Town Cove, they assume Eastham will use non-traditional methods? And to me, that's clearly different from our 2009 report, which said we would sewer. Whatever we had to do, we would sewer and send it to Tri-Town. So that, to me, was a,
How did they come up with that conclusion on their own?
I think they were,
Because they know everything.
what'd you say?
They're all
They
easy.
know everything,
They're
so.
all easy. Remind me what IA is, please.
They know it before we do.
Innovative
Oh,
alternative
that's right.
Yeah.
septic
sorry.
systems. So they're sort of in-place mini wastewater treatment plants, whether shared by
Yeah.
several or individually.
In relating to that too, while I have that in mind, I asked him if we would be given credit, the watershed as a whole, a sub-watershed, we're dealing with sub-watersheds, Town Cove. Would there be credit given in the amount of nitrogen that needed to be reduced if Eastham could show that it had lots of nitrogen-reducing IA systems in that watershed? And he said if they were in place before the MEP report, they would not, they're already considered, they're part of the load calculation. Any that were built after the MEP report for Nauset Marsh would be able to be deducted from the total amount of nitrogen we need to remove, so it would be a benefit to us. And I don't know how many we have in that watershed. So-
Actually, there's not many,
Yeah.
to be honest, because it's just not,
It's not a problem.
density-wise, it's not an area that's as difficult
Yeah.
in terms of lot constraints than other areas of town. And keep in mind, the reason that the Board of Health requires IA systems in some situations, it's really the public health issue with wastewater on site impacting the drinking water supply. So even though it's not a perfect fix, it's at least an improvement in what the discharge of the effluent quality is. And so therefore, the benefit to the drinking water as opposed to, for an environmental reason. So even though we reach the same endpoint,
You can have, when you described the IA systems before, you talked about their many treatment plans as if it was more than one, but you can have an IA system for just an individual home.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
We have over 100 of them, right?
we have well over 100 of them.
okay. But they're scattered throughout the town.
And
they're not around.
yes, and there's more of them. We actually had a map at one point that showed the location of each one. We could probably go back and revise that map. But they're most often in the densely developed neighborhoods, particularly in areas where if someone wanted to get nitrogen credit, they would be willing to spend the money. For instance, if you're on the coastal
Yeah.
bank or whatnot.
So I feel like I'm jumping into the middle, but this was just kind of hitting me, this conversation with Mike, and I will go back to a bigger view, but there was one other thing that he said that I wanted to let you know about. This is about Tri-Town. Talking about the non-traditional technologies and the amount of flow that we would be sending to Orleans, as was discussed at the meeting with the selectmen. I asked him about the Orleans selectmen's thinking about Tri-Town, knowing that was really, and with our selectmen, it's about the only thing they think about in this whole process, and they're really very focused on that, I thought, most of them. But anyway,
At the meeting,
at the
yes.
meeting, yeah.
That was most of the discussion.
Yes. He says, relating to the Orleans situation, about the abandonment of the discharge at Namskaket, talking about whether Tri-Town could accept Eastham flow. That was the issue. The Orleans situation related to the abandonment of the discharge at Namskaket. Their Board of Selectmen has pledged not to put any more effluent into Namskaket Marsh.
Which I asked for clarification on and did not get a response, but it's been a decision they made. I was trying to get to the essence of why that decision was made, but I didn't get a response.
It
I'm
was-
sorry, who
maybe we
made
should
It was a
buy-
Who made
political,
that decision, Sandy?
the Orleans Board of Selectmen, and it was a very political decision. Two or three of them believe that there's damage to Namskaket Marsh from the effluent. The others do not believe that, and many studies have shown that it's not true, but in an effort to keep peace, the selectmen unanimously agreed to say they would not send any discharge into the marsh. On the other hand, two of them don't believe any is going in there anyway, two or three of them, so they felt it was a comfortable thing to do.
Do
So
they
that-
feel that it's not going into the marsh because it's going underneath?
It's going under, yeah, way under,
It's way under,
yeah.
not anywhere near the marsh.
Did the USGS do a pretty elaborate study by drilling wells, and Weiskell,
Yes,
Dr.
there was-
Weiskell was involved?
There have been 6 or 7 studies.
And what was his conclusion?
They had a day-long meeting, one of our meetings that we attended was a day-long session, among those 7 or 8 consultants. And they were asked that question, do you see a problem with the marsh? And they were like 95% sure, from all of their different angles that they had studied it over the years, that there was not a problem for the marsh.
So how can they make a political decision in regard to this technical decision?
Because they need to get a 2/3 majority at town meeting. I mean,
Wow.
that's what it all boils down to, always.
Well,
They've
they better
captured
be
those
good
votes by making
politicians.
that decision.
I gotta say
People
that.
traded their votes to get that
When the
decision.
USGS says it's clean, it's clean.
Yeah, And they may come back to that if they find, and that's one of the other issues for East Ham. If Orleans,
Okay, I'm sorry I
Fines.
interrupted.
no, that's fine. If Orleans, oh, let me finish this part about the flow, the discharge to Tri-Town.
Okay.
The lack of an approved disposal site to date is number 2. And that's what I want to get back to. The push by some stakeholders to reduce flow to a new wastewater plant and the concern over cost. Because of all those things, Orleans does not feel in a position to say it can accept any amount of flow from other towns. So,
They're
So he
closing
could
their
have told us
doors.
that at the meeting and saved a lot of time.
Right, so where is the
I
regional
mean,
solution?
Why didn't he just come up and say it out front?
well, let's go back to one of those. It's because they're all in flux, all of them. The new approved disposal site to date. If they don't dispose of anything at Tri-Town, they're looking for another site where they could dispose. And one of them is one of the clover leaves on Route 6.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I've been busy on a lot of other things since I went to that meeting, so it's
Yeah,
all just
yeah,
wandering around up
It's
here.
always that way.
But I remember there was a discussion that they had 7 sites.
Yes.
And they thought 2 were primary.
Yeah.
Neither of these is Namskaket or any of them.
Right.
And that they had 5 other alternatives. So why is it now that they don't have other sites?
They have reduced by all of the parameters they've used. I think they had 12 to start with. They've reduced it to 2 that they think are most feasible. And those involve the state.
Okay.
Department of Transportation, which is always tricky. But they may work. But one of the questions for Eastham is there any place in Eastham that we could use?
But
Not
Yeah,
that would
the
be
great-
approved.
what we're going to do, we've tasked GHD with going back and refining the 2009 plan. However, keep in mind that cost of wastewater treatment is driven by the length of pipe. So if what we have to do to solve the solution, to solve the problem and improve the water quality is take all the sewage and ship it off to a wastewater treatment plant. Let's say, for instance, it's located at the Tri-Town facility. And then take the treated effluent and ship it back to Eastham for disposal internally at sites
Transfer station.
unknown. I would expect that the cost of doing that would double.
Boggle.
But that's just me, and I have asked that question out loud, not being an engineer, it seems like a reasonable question to ask. But we will go through the exercise. We are certainly, right now, I'm in discussion with Nate, refining the numbers and getting that information into Mike's hands, which we're doing right now as we speak, so. At least there'll be clear communication, and I'm in full agreement with Adele that at least if we ask a simple question and we get a straight answer, we know where we are.
Yeah.
And
It's much
question
preferable
asked and
to this
answered.
other
And
dancing.
I really have to credit our Board of Selectmen, because I've been at meetings over the last, since the 2009 report was in the works, since 2006 really, I've been working with Nate on that, and many opportunities for Orleans to answer the question, and our selectmen, I give them full credit, were very clear, very concise about the request, asked for a response and didn't get it. I mean, rightfully so, they're not in a position to be able to answer it. They're internally still working with a various number of stakeholders, and they have to come to some internal agreement, as Sandy said, for rational reasons, I guess, and political reasons, and they're not there yet. So to a certain degree, you know, it's a process we don't have control over, but I think it's really important. It is a problem we have to solve. And the bottom line is, if the ultimate desire for the town of Orleans is to solve the water quality issue in Town Cove, we have to work together, or you cannot solve the problem.
Right.
So that's clear as day to me.
And I think we quite possibly are going to be legally mandated to work
Yes,
together.
Correct,
That's what's
A
gonna end
targeted
up
wastewater
happening, yeah.
management plan.
right.
And let me
there are
understand
there-
what you're saying about Orleans and going from Tri-Town and its effluent. That it's like, they can't take our sewerage stuff unless we come up with a plan to get rid of the effluent that is produced after they process the
They don't want to
sewage.
use their effluent beds. They do not want to discharge the treated wastewater on site. Because even though it's treated to such a high level, much higher than what the septage treatment plant is discharging right now, that permit's gonna go away, because
Okay.
they're not meeting the current required environmental protection standard. So they're getting a pass right now, but they have to come up to current requirements.
Okay.
So a wastewater treatment plant built today would be much more efficient, much more,
Okay.
however.
But it's basically, that's the issue. It's the inability to to discharge
Discharge
the
it into the
effluent that
ground.
affects what they'll take in.
That's one of many, Adele. I mean, there's just, it's endlessly
And-
convoluted.
Yeah, I don't
That's
think
one.
there's
In
any,
terms of what they will take in, is endlessly convoluted?
Yeah, there's, yes, even that. And I'll hand you one more thing. These are, we haven't gone over this yet, but this was supposed to be done last Wednesday, and after a 4-hour meeting, there wasn't time. So we never got to it. But this is what the consultant saw as the options for Tri-Town, and there's several, you know, subsets of that. We haven't discussed it at the committee meeting, and I can't tell you really what it means, but it's there. That's what we will be discussing on December 17th, among other things.
so to a certain degree, even though these individuals have a voice in the process,
Yeah.
they actually don't
Yeah.
have the authority to implement the plan. So
Can you explain, what would option 2 be? Providing septic disposal only?
It
So
means
there's no
no
waste- how
wastewater
do you-
treatment there.
So what is, you mean septic disposal is trucking it away?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, so so I see, it's not really at the plant, it's just that it would be trucked? Or it would be piped to there, and then it would be trucked away? Is
Are
that
you
the-
looking at option
Number
two?
two, yeah.
Okay.
Nope. Well, let me give
What's
you,
currently going on.
Yeah, that's
well-
currently what's
Currently,
going on.
what's
Yeah,
happening.
so that's what's, okay.
yeah.
And it goes
So
to,
that's just-
and it goes to Maine eventually.
Yeah,
Well,
The
the,
sludge
The sludge
does.
goes to Maine, yeah.
yeah, they,
cakes.
I took a tour of the plant, and Adele, I can tell you, and perhaps for the folks at home, it might be helpful. They take in the sludge from the tanks, and that's septage, okay? And they treat it and separate it from the suspended solids that's in the sludge. They release the water on site, and they produce what they call a sludge cake. Yeah, and it, as I understand it, it is a lot like, say, cake. You know, it's soft, but it holds together, and you can put it on a truck, and it goes to Maine. And standard in the industry is to just apply it to agricultural fields. It's that kind of material where it's useful and doesn't cause a problem. And Maine is a place where there is land you can do that. There's not land everywhere for that kind of technology. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, a couple of the other issues for Eastham, that we need to come up with some answers on, and maybe these are part of the things that you already charged Nate with. One was a possibility of a treatment site, and it was mentioned that,
Discharge site.
discharge site, and it was mentioned that the evaluation of a site could cost up to $100,000 to do, just the evaluation, not the building of whatever would be required. The question of why they assume that, the Orleans consultants assume that Eastham will use non-traditional methods, we have to deal with that. I mean, I don't know really where they're coming from, but we need to say, as part of our joint planning, is this what we're gonna do or is it not? Are we gonna stick with our sewering of that area?
I can tell you that, since I've worked with the wastewater consultant, the only plan we ever discussed is the one that's published.
Right.
So,
Right.
they are hypothesizing
Yes.
what Eastham's going to do without asking
Right.
us what we're going to do. So, it's, you know, it's,
I think what they're doing is saying, okay, first, they start with these, what they call the bookends, all traditional, all sewering, basically. What would you have to sewer? And the 208 process did this too. But then they've got these alternatives bookends, which is if you did all alternatives, not sewering, but everything else you can do, what would we have to, what could we do? Could we reduce the nitrogen to the amount that's acceptable? And they concluded that couldn't possibly work. So the solution they're planning would be a hybrid. And since we share this watershed, you know, what could they do on their side? What might we do on our side? But it's not like they're planning for us. They're just, they're working in the dark trying to figure
They're
out something.
hypothesizing.
Yes, exactly.
Just to ask a question, when you said they had thought about, and I had read that also, that all the alternatives wouldn't allow Eastham to meet its target. But because now today you've illuminated me a little bit by saying the IA systems weren't included in that analysis, I'm wondering if all 6,600 properties in Eastham had IA, I know that's very expensive, could we meet our target? I'm just thinking about that.
They'd have to be in that watershed, that sub-watershed we're talking about, whatever ones we count, and built after
Well, I mean, we've only got 100 now.
MEP.
I'm
Yeah.
considering adding 6,500.
65.
Well, I know how expensive it is, but
Yes.
when I look at sewering,
Yes.
it might not be as expensive.
You
And
know,
it discharges the water here.
it's a very complicated discussion because it's not as simple as just that. There is sort of an opportunity to make a deal, if you will. Say, for instance, as you're referring, you can't reach 0% or complete removal of wastewater in a targeted watershed. There are ways to get credit, and, you know, on a regulatory evaluation. Very complicated. Orleans has been, I don't know how much money they've spent on planning, studies, evaluations, as you were referring to, Marcel. years and years of this. So they have a real leg up on us, but I can say as the person that has been working with the our wastewater consultant, our money has been very wisely spent and targeted. And I would like to say, to an end, there have been results from the limited planning money that we have invested. Every time you do an environmental evaluation, as you're saying, to evaluate a discharge site or anything, it's very expensive. There's just a lot to it. It's very complicated. So, I think that this is an opportunity. I see this as a challenging opportunity, but a good time to, get some response from Orleans and, in a very short time, they are hoping to bring this plan to their voters. So we'll see what happens between now and May, if they can form, what they're trying to do is form a consensus as far as my very brief. I mean, I have
Absolutely.
not nearly sat in like Sandy, but that's what they're
And Charles?
gaining. I mean, and I think it's similar to the processes I think we tried to use with water, our
Yes.
water plan, bringing the public in, facilitating some meetings. And the ponds, I think we did that on a very simple scale, but we did the same thing. We tried to bring in anyone that had a question, let them be part of the development process. That's what they're trying to do. It's just there's just a lot of people involved in Orleans.
And a lot of very strong opinions.
Sandy, I take it from the discussion that there's no economy of scale involved here. I mean, normally, if you have two entities that together generate a higher volume, then you have a more efficient plant, a lower cost per gallon or whatever. But that's not the case, obviously.
We did look at that. Wright Pierce did a study, I think you probably, in the back of your mind, will recall, long ago, 10 years ago, looking at, of course, it's the most cost-effective solution for economies of scale. If everybody brings their wastewater to one plant, it's treated and discharged, it's cheaper for everyone. And so that was exactly what the goal was. Since the time of that report, the disposal site now has politically been removed as an option. So therefore, that alternative is no longer on the table, or at least currently it's not on the table. So there's been a lot of changes that have occurred.
Tri-Town being the disposal site?
Tri-Town was
Okay.
where the effluent beds were originally designed, and all the studies supported what Marcel is implying, that there was no environmental impact from the discharge.
But are all the effluent beds around Namscacket Marsh? Because you said they've been politically removed.
Well, they're
From the future.
in the future for, if this septic treatment plant is demolished and they build a
Oh, yeah.
wastewater facility, wastewater treatment facility, or a combined facility, they do not want to use that land to discharge the effluent. They want to ship it to
Someplace.
these other places that you mentioned.
Okay.
I don't even know where they are. You looked on a map and you saw them?
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I listened to the
Oh, okay,
discussion.
okay.
And he talked
I-
about there
I
being
guess
these
it's
sites.
on-
In
a
one
map
of, in one
somewhere.
of the stack of handouts that we got, and they're all on the Orleans website, by the way, town website, there's a water quality advisory panel committee, and like ours, like yours, and there's all these documents there. Right now, all there are the summaries of each meeting, which are about 12 pages long each. The plan for public publication of this, whatever hybrid plan comes out, which we don't know yet, and these meeting reports that we've been getting are on there, and if there's 7 sets of them. And the possible other disposal sites, I think, are meeting 6. I think they were in that including the
Yeah,
pictures. Yeah.
it's in my notes, that
Yeah.
he did
What's a
describe.
little unclear to me is, at the end of this process, if this committee, okay, one or two things can happen. They can fail to have a consensus, or they have a consensus. Who's to say that the joint Orleans Board of Selectmen are going to concur with the recommendation from that group? There were two selectmen sitting at the table, but I don't really understand, I guess.
I think there are 3 of them who would abide, for sure, and maybe 5. But there are 3 who come regularly, 2 who do not because they still work. And, yeah, I mean, that's the next step. And
Mhm,
what
okay.
articles go to town meeting and for which particular further studies, or maybe it'll be one watershed, but certainly something to do with Tri-Town has to go to that town meeting.
But
Yeah.
I sort of don't see, and this was my problem at the meeting, how we can sort of wait on Orleans and what they do in May. We know that the Cape Cod Commission has to submit its 208 plan to the EPA, I would guess no later than early July, because EPA is going to take time to process it. In order to comply with the settlement they've agreed to, they have to approve the plan by September 15th. So, you know, and we're as involved in that particular thing as Orleans. I mean, we're one of the jurisdictions that has to have a wastewater management plan. And I mean, if we wait till May, I just don't see the pieces coming together. I think that it is difficult because we are in some ways not dependent on, but very affected by whatever Orleans decides to do. But I think still at the same time, we have to be moving forward on our own plan so that we are in a position to have a plan, to say to Orleans, this is what we can do or what we can't do. I mean, I just don't see the time, knowing how the wheels grind so slowly.
And one of the other limits on us, time-wise, is that by, I think it's June 30th, we're supposed to have a wastewater management, what's it called? It's
Watershed
The
plan.
watershed, targeted watershed management plan.
Yes, we
Yeah.
need to have a,
That's what I meant instead of wastewater, the targeted.
Well, I think really that's what we're gonna have Nate working on. So this is actually a good thing, rather than us having spent all this money on a CWMP and all of the requirements for that. It's very, very cumbersome. This is a real task, a
Okay.
watershed-driven initiative. And,
But that has to be coordinated with Orleans, because it's a joint watershed.
yes, and to a certain degree, we are, you know, it's a circular argument, we are dependent on them.
Yeah.
If our first option is to take wastewater from that area and ship it to Orleans, and they don't have capacity in their wastewater treatment plant,
Yeah.
then we need another alternative.
You know, maybe we have to come up with a plan with a series of alternatives
Right.
rather than
Yes.
not
Right, so
having
that's-
any
that's
plan.
exactly-
If not
And,
that,
you know,
yes.
Right, that's
And
exactly
and
where
the
we
answer
are.
is we do it all ourselves.
Next preferred,
Exactly.
Well, heaven help us, but I
We
mean.
can't, we actually can't.
Well, then, but you might end up having to do what you think you can't, but the best that you
Well,
can.
legally, we can't, I mean. Legally, we're going to have a joint, where we have a shared watershed approach.
that's what the
Yeah,
208
but you could
report
have
is
two
going to
part-
require.
Two parts of that. I mean, in other words, you have to be in the same one for a watershed, but you could have one, I would guess, that is independent of Orleans. And Orleans have one that's them.
Right.
Because
So
the other
we-
thing, what happens is if they shoot it down at town meeting, you know,
This-
the odds on that to
Well,
me
then they're
are-
gonna have to come up with an alternative.
So I think we have to develop something.
You could plan that way with
No.
the idea they come together, but the 208 plan
No, I
will
understand that.
require there be a plan that is agreed to by both towns. They both have to put their names at the bottom of that plan.
But it
And if
could-
they don't, CLF will happily go back to court.
And
I
they're
think they're
giving us-
waiting for this whole thing to fall apart.
And they're giving us till September 15th.
Right.
To do that.
That's right. And
Before
they
they go
they
But I
got,
think
court.
it gives you ground rules if you
Yeah.
do that. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
if
I-
you need the worst
I
scenario.
think it's very
plan.
important that the Cape Towns come up with something on this, because I can't think of what could be worse than to go back to that judge and show that after all this time, nothing has happened.
So,
So-
yeah, I mean, and I think we are quite sensitive and understand.
Yeah, and I'm not
What-
talking about just us, it's
Right.
all the towns on the
Yeah,
Cape.
What,
have the
Well,
same
what
I-
problem.
Orleans, what
agree with
Orleans
you on this.
internally is going
Not
through similar
disagreeing, I'm
to
just thinking of a.
what we
Yeah.
just went through
at
with
least
water.
purpose
We
to be independent.
We had to bring this back to the voters several
Yeah.
times. And so we understand that aspect. But Adele's exactly right. There's more involved here because there's now a stick that's saying, you know, there's going to be a clock ticking, so.
When
we
I was,
need- Yeah.
when I was a kid, there used to be this little feature in some newspaper we took on a regular basis, I don't remember what it was, and it was called, "There's a watchbird watching you," and there were these little pictures of some kid doing something, and this bird was sitting on his shoulder watching. And that's the way I feel, there's sort of a watchbird watching us, and we're gonna have
But
to
on the other hand,
get
this
it
is,
together.
this is not only, we got some sticks here, but we got some carrots
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
really good. I mean,
Mhm.
Orleans has spent all this money, we can kind of piggyback on that.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of work for us, and Nate will be able to use some of it, I believe, in terms of analysis of alternatives that weren't in the 2009 plan.
We've asked for the watershed plans and the work is supposedly done on our behalf. So, I mean, clearly, maybe they solved our problem for us. So we're anxious to gather the data and the information and the plans that they evaluated and look at it, and great.
And the other,
We'll see
the
if-
other carrot is that for the state funds, watershed-based rather, multi-town-based, watershed-based rather than individual watershed plans are going to be favored for the 0% funding. So they're really looking for that joint work too, and it could benefit us.
These alternative sites, are they in Orleans? You said there were 6 of them?
One of them might be in Brewster, I think that they,
No, there's
I
none.
don't- I
there's
haven't
none in
seen the
Brewster.
map.
No.
because
There's-
the water has to be
She said where
discharged
they were.
within the,
It has to be, it can't be discharged generally within the watershed from which it's being removed.
But
And
you
it
can't take it
can't-
to somebody else's
and it
watershed.
can't-
you can take it to somebody else's watershed.
That wouldn't make
No,
much
there are none,
sense.
there are none in Brewster. There were quite a few in Orleans, but they were able to eliminate most of them very, very readily. And I can't tell you what they were or why, but
Yeah, I could add one. I think I remember that one of them was a golf course, and one of them was a school's playground. And that was, an item like that was very acceptable to have on the initial list. But when you look a little bit further, you would say, you know, it just can't take the volume that we would want to have. But, you know, they've dutifully gone through the process of looking. So,
yeah.
The current one is in Brewster, right? The Tri-Town?
No,
It's in Orleans.
It's in Orleans, is
The
it?
discharge that people are worrying about is into a marsh that's owned by
Yeah,
Brewster.
Within 50 feet of the plant, it's right there.
Yeah,
They grow
yeah.
pumpkins.
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, I want to make, I understand that the Orleans selectmen want to have in the February timeframe a specific enough engineering statement such that they can go to town meeting and at a minimum, asked for funding for design of what they've stated. Okay. And it seems to me that that's going to happen. That's what they. Now, they may say, well, we want design money and we also want construction money. I mean, they
Yes.
or
Demolition.
it, Well, yeah, I forgot, I can't do the details on Tri-Town, but it seems to me that a good target or a good goal for Eastham would be, is to, at that same time, end of January, beginning of February, have engineering data that would be as specific as what Orleans would have to at least be going forward and ask for design money. And that, and Eastham be going to its own town meeting in May, saying, okay, we need design money for this type of thing. That would get the two towns, having gone to their populace, getting approval for a funding for design. Now, which to me would please the regulators in that it shows definite action to move forward. And I don't know, that seems to me the game plan. Now, if for some reason Orleans has difficulty going down that road, and it's only their hope that they can, the whole thing would slow down a little bit more, but it seems to be a wise use of the normal cycle that we have established here for the two towns.
I have an answer to the question of where the sites are.
Oh,
They're in East Orleans, and they're Department of Transportation properties.
as far as the going to town meeting for money, we will need probably to do something about Tri-Town, but if they're not accepting our septage, or we're not planning to have our wastewater treated there, then we would only be part of the agreement to demolish it, which is $1 million plus per town. So I don't even know how we get to that by town meeting. There-
I don't know either, but yes, you're right. Let me just say that again. So we think that Orleans, in their Maytown meeting, will have an article that will ask for either construction or design and construction or demolition. And now,
Don't you think they're gonna have to come up with a cost estimate
Yes, that's the next big thing.
before
Yeah.
Didn't
people
you
are
say
gonna
that's what
fund
the
a plan?
17th meeting is about?
The 17th meeting is supposed to begin talking about cost. There's been no discussion about cost whatsoever, and everybody's waiting for that. None, just none. And the Orleans Finance Committee has a
Yeah.
really sharp guy on it who is developing a matrix for evaluating cost, but including in that risk, so that it may be cheap, but it may be very risky. So that would not be a good option, maybe. If it's expensive, but it's very sure, maybe that's a good option, or something in between. So they're evaluating all the costs that we're gonna get that way.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, Jane, in terms of Eastham building their own facility, you'd really only have to, if you had primary and secondary treatment, the effluent from that could just be discharged into the ocean. Not in the Nauset Marsh, but out in the ocean. There are really strong currents out there. It's actually a lot safer than what Boston's doing, discharging their effluent. And that's secondary effluent they're throwing out into the bay. That's not, I mean, ecologically, that's sound, because because of the strong currents.
That's been very controversial. Ocean outfalls, it's just not that easy if it only were. But what we'll do, just to step back here, is, we need to refine our plan. And we have looked internally back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, leading up to 2009 report. We looked at internally, could we use land we currently own for a disposal site, for a treatment plant? But you know what, time has gone on, we need to go back to the blackboard and start all over and refine what we can and eliminate what we can't do, and so that's exactly where we are. So we'll look at all the options, including ocean outfalls, and then, as you
got
say,
that
you know,
big
if things
piece of land, you
aren't
know.
feasible, then they get eliminated as an option, so just as what Mike was saying.
IAs for 6,600
Bring
homes.
it up.
Exactly.
And you get a brownfield
You-
credit
you
every
look
home
at
in
it,
a
You
homeowner.
look at it, is it
gonna be
a
the cheapest way to
feasible
go.
alternative or not? We did do this in a very, you know,
Somewhat cursory.
yeah, cursory is a good word, fashion. Orleans is doing it in
Yes.
infinitesimal detail, you know, so
They got the
it's
bucks.
just, you know, is it necessary to get into such a, you know, I don't know, maybe it depends where you are.
I would have thought that to put forward two alternatives. One is Tri-Town or with Orleans, and the other one saying, well, we can do it by ourselves. And having an alternative that would be distasteful to everyone, including EPA, would be an advantage to you.
Yes.
Simply
Yes.
because that would reinforce EPA and the feds and the state pressure on Orleans to come up with a reasonable outcome. But actually, it is feasible. I think discharging into the ocean is okay. They do it on the the military discharge on the Cape Cod Canal. And they do it because there's such strong currents back and forth, and stuff just disappears.
And that's why we don't have to do wastewater treatment on the bay or the ocean, is because it just gets totally flushed all.
You should have
every
been
time.
down there today. It was
So-
quite a sight.
So the ocean has very, very strong offshore currents, as you know. And I think if you just go out a kilometer or so, that'd be just fine.
There was a discussion, my notes aren't quite clear, but Domenica brought up something about the Cape Cod Commission had been working with Orleans on evaluations, I guess, of various approaches. And he suggested that we request that they
Yes.
do evaluations
We
for
already
us.
have.
you done that?
Actually, Orleans had our watershed plans, so they actually have requested of the Cape Cod Commission that they release those reports to us. They didn't
Okay,
want to do
yeah.
it without getting permission from the Cape Cod Commission. I just thought it was unusual that we hadn't been offered
Yeah, I
the
would
draft
think so.
reports, but
Especially if they gave them to Orleans.
The reason the Cape Cod Commission gave for that was, again, I guess, political. They wanted to see what Orleans could do, and let Orleans be a model, this Tri-Town group be a model, and not get involved with their planning. Let's see what they can do without confounding it, I think was the thinking.
It's called open government.
So,
One little bit of good news that I found out, and I hadn't been informed otherwise, at that meeting, we discussed that with the selectmen, was that Mike Domenica, on behalf of the town of Orleans, did apply for some, it's called DLTA funding. It's for technical assistance to the Cape Cod Commission, and they wanted to fund, request funding so that they can look at options that would include planning for Eastham and Brewster. So it's not yet approved, and I don't know where it is on the governor's list of things that will or will not get funded, but the request is out there for $50,000, and if, in fact, that got approved, it's not completely clear, but in discussing this with Mike, of course, we would want that money funneled to our consultant GHD to work on our behalf, and I don't know who Brewster's working with, but, you know, that would
Horsley
be,
would.
that would be really good if we could get a little of that money, so that would
Yep.
be
And-
helpful.
Yeah.
Did you
We'll
say
see.
again what the money can be used for?
It's for watershed plans, watershed planning efforts,
Okay.
regional watershed planning efforts. It was a very short request. It wasn't too lengthy, it was only like a page and a half.
So,
Oh, and then he also, that's the one that he talked about, that he wanted us to support that funding.
Yeah, I asked, I mean, it's already in there, and they actually never asked for support for it. But I asked if that would be helpful, and I really didn't get a response, so I guess,
From Mike, you mean?
well, that the town of Eastham would support
Yeah.
this request for funding, but
Yep.
I guess they don't really need it.
so have we come to as much as we can talk about on advisory panel at this point?
I think so, and I'm delighted that we're moving forward with
All
the
right,
NAEP piece.
I tell you what, I've got a couple of small ones here that that are related. I just wanted to make sure that I catch them. Let's see, I sent an email to, let's see, Stacy Smith, who is that person who helps moderate the Orleans advisory panel meeting, and she also has been doing the 208 business for the Cape Cod Commission. If she had any information on these constructed floating wetlands, and because that phrase of words has been used to identify a possible technology, a non-traditional technology. And when I read those words, I said, you know, it's possible that might fit Salt Pond, and it's possible it might fit Town Cove, and because it's some structure in an estuary water, and both of those estuaries are reasonably protected from storms out in the ocean, such that they perhaps could be there growing and doing their thing every day of the year. So she said that one of the engineers that's working with Stantec has experience in that area, and she would bring together that information. Now, I guess my thought is that I would be surprised if it takes care of more than, say, 2% of the extra nitrate in the water there. It might be even down by around 1%. But if it is some type of floating structure, and what I did is I went online and I read the references that have to do with constructed floating wetlands. And basically what they say is that there is a recycled product on which a plant grows. It floats on the surface, and it's actually on the roots that the native bacteria have a, what do you call it, stratum, a surface to sit on while they do their growing. They take the nitrate out of the water, they eventually die of old age, and they drop to the bottom, and some more grow. Anyways, that's the only alternative out of a list of about 40 that I've been able to think of that might in some way fit us. If nothing else, it's a way of demonstrating that we're doing a good look ourselves here within Eastham, and if in fact it could turn out to be one of these items in Town Cove and one of these items in Salt Pond, and if nothing else, we find out how well it works on Cape Cod, and if it works fairly well, we've found just an inexpensive way of dealing with of what's there. The fact that the town does grow oysters in floating baskets on Salt Pond makes me think it could, in fact, be there without too much disturbance to the to what's there. And as soon as I get more detail, I want to go to our natural resource office and start the conversation with them. If they have some information from their backgrounds that would give us a quick yes or give us a quick no, then that would be helpful. Okay.
Charles, I talked with Henry Lind about it because that's his thing. Oysters and
I
shellfish.
thought sailing was his thing.
Well, it is now. It's hard to get him in town, but he is here right now. I talked with him about it, and his comment, of course, is what all of the, everybody says about biologicals. They may be terrific, but they're not reliable. The risk factor is high, although the effectiveness may be very good. And he wanted to know what anchors it. Do you want to know what would keep it out of the way of moving around and banging into the oyster
baskets.
farms, and, yeah. So he's looking at it. I mean, I've got him
You
doing
know,
research.
the Chinese are doing this on a grand scale.
Yeah,
In fact, your neighbor, I think, was involved in that, wasn't he?
mate,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if it works, but I've seen photos of it. They've got rivers with these things. There's almost like an avenue down the middle of a river with all this
Yeah.
stuff going.
So, all right, let's see, I got another one here. I did also send an email to Stacy Smith again, and I was asking her what information she had on the organization and structure of these waste management agencies. Thinking that perhaps they fit in the neighborhood of something like a fire protection district or a school district or something like that, and there might be a pretty well standard language that gives them a charter, it gives them a standard organizational structure, it gives them standard procedures as to how they do things. And as I understand it, these, and I'm a little confused here, I think it's wastewater management agencies, although I've seen the term waste management agencies. It would be the entity that holds the permit for a watershed, and it would be the state's regulatory procedure to, if there's failure to comply within that district, it's an identifiable agency that the state can go to and say, well, we're pulling your permit or something like that. We're not going to let you do something. All right. So I've asked her for that type of language just because whatever happens, it's inevitable that we're going to have one of these beasts in the future. And there'll be two kinds. There'll be the ones that apply to the watersheds just in the town, and the other category, a cousin or a twin, will be the kind that applies to a watershed that cross town boundaries. And there's going to have to be some procedure as to how the two selectmen and town administrators of those cross-town boundary work together, to make everything happen. So, okay.
Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, thank you, Sandy, very much.
Yeah, Merry
Appreciate you. Okay, we pretty well have, let's see, I guess I could add to what Jane says. I do intend to go to the fertilizer regulation presentation on the 18th of December, 3 p.m., at the courthouse over in Barnstable. I think they will be asking for some comments from town level, and I think as an individual, I am going to go prepared to say, I think you should do this, if not for the, speaking for the town of Orleans, speaking for Charles Harris, the citizen. So, okay. Let me see, so we got that, I guess that,
See you, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
I guess I could say a little bit more on the fertilizer subject. It's my understanding that Conscom has pretty well has come up with procedures that are consistent with the specifics that are in the town proposed regulation that the Board of Health has come up with. Each technical point is the same. It's just kind of the two different categories that you come to, in that the CONSCOM would not be applying a regulation unless they had someone coming in with a proposal that involved that kind of thing, involved putting in new lawn or something like that. Okay. Let's talk about the brochure that, let's see, Adele has started, or excuse me, Janet has started. Janet, I was hoping that Roger would be here and that he would set up a little kind of to-do list to assist this. And but he's not here, so we'll roll that over to the next meeting.
What do you mean by a to-do list to assist it?
Just the administrative tracking of a change that we would have.
I think Janet demonstrated last time that she's quite able
I can do that.
to make changes.
I don't need Roger's
I'm
help.
concerned that we're getting so involved in
Yeah.
form as opposed to substance.
Well,
I would hate to see this
Hear,
follow
hear.
the same track
All
as
right.
the pond protection.
Yes,
plan.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I hear you.
I
Okay.
can run
We're-
multinational experiments and stay on a track. I can certainly do that.
Janet,
All right.
are you aware of the ACECs, areas of critical environmental concern?
Which are the, what's it you do?
Okay, it's, maybe Jane can describe it better than I could, but it's, the wetlands you're talking about are a resource
Yes.
by
that's right.
definition, and they enjoy a great deal of protection. And in addition to that, they're what's called areas of critical
Yeah, yeah.
environmental concern, and they impose additional conditions.
Yeah.
And these are very rigorous. And so,
Good.
yes, even the Conservation Commission has to enforce them. And so I think that maybe this pamphlet that you're writing, which is very useful, should feature that,
Oh, no,
to tell people
That's
the sort of protection that wetlands enjoy in Eastham, and perhaps also wake up some people that realize that there are things that they're doing that they shouldn't and so on. So
Yes, sir.
it doesn't need any additional protection. It needs information and
I did start, I mean, I didn't realize about that. I mean, as I said, I don't know an awful lot about these things. So that basically
Okay.
what I did here was to try and write down as many things that I could think of that I wanted to, they're placeholders. And I did go onto the state regs to try and find the wetland protection things, because I'm used to looking in that, but I failed abysmally at getting a
I
lead.
can tell you where it is.
Well, I know where it is, but I couldn't find anything that related to the wetlands. I mean, I could find I know,
I have a more fundamental question before we get into the specifics, since I was not at the meeting in which this was first discussed.
we did
It would
discuss
help.
it for more than about 5
Okay.
minutes, okay?
It would help me to clarify what purposes we're seeking to achieve by the brochure. What is it
Yeah,
that we
that's
want the
right.
brochure to do? Because I think until we define its purposes, it's sort of hard to figure out what should go in there.
well, I mean,
Well,
Janet is trying to promote the health of the wetlands.
I understand that in a very generalized sense. That's not what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about. Normally, when you sit down and you say, I'm going to write something, I'm going to write a paper, you have at least one or two or three, how many specific purposes? What, like, are we trying to educate the public about what the problem is? Are we trying to educate them about what solutions are? Are we trying, I mean, that's what I mean, those kinds of specifics. What is it that we want this thing to do?
But you also brought up a point that I had originally thought of it going in this direction. And it was only after I was talking to other people, I mean, we talked about estuaries, so you go and you say estuaries and you look at the things that we've done and it's limited. And I was talking usually to my Audubon crew and other things, and I realized it's actually a much broader issue because really we have salt marshes and we have wetlands. Now remember, I don't know much about these. I'm just searching.
No,
and
I'm not saying.
No,
what-
no, no.
But what do you want to
You
tell
want-
people about
you want to
whatever it is
tell-
you want to tell?
You want to
them?
tell, but well, people don't understand a lot of things. It's the same on the other thing. I agree with Marcel. I wanted to start again with, these are the rules that are already in place, or whatever the right words are for.
Okay,
This is
I'm
the
not getting
protections
my
of-
point across. For what purpose? If you
Well,
put this,
Adele, you're
Marcel, would
visualizing a
you
problem.
allow
There's no
Janet to
problem.
answer since she's visualizing? You come to me and you put this in my hand. I'm not saying it can't have a purpose, but I'd like to figure out what the purpose is. To me, this was the problem we had with the other brochure.
Yeah, but
We
you
were,
want,
we ran ahead writing, and we were well into many drafts before we started to clarify in our own minds what it was we were trying to get that brochure to do.
well, I think you must speak for yourself, because I was pretty clarified on a lot of things
Well, I
early
certainly
on.
didn't.
Well, I
certainly
know,
didn't.
you and I have very different viewpoints of viewing things. That's one of the
Okay,
strengths.
That doesn't care whether we have the same or the
Well,
different.
it's
I
very
ju-
much things make us-
What do we want to do? Do we want to educate
Educate.
people about what? About the salt marshes? About their
There's so
existence,
many-
about their
Well,
okay, we got this much space.
Yeah, I could start
So it's
with
got to
that.
be, what do we want to tell them in this much space?
This is to be a communication. We want it attractive. We are reaching out to the general public, and we want to tell them how to keep humans from harming a natural resource, a specific one, which is our estuaries. And which is different. We've decided is different from the brochure that we made for the freshwater situations, so it's education to the public specific to estuaries, but specific to all the little twists and turns we have going on here in Eastham.
Okay. The only thing you said that was at all a purpose was advice on how to keep humans from harming the salt marshes.
Yep.
I mean, saying it's education, I mean, anything is education, you know. You have English, you have math, but they're all serving different purposes. So that's what I am trying to get us to focus on at the beginning of this project. What is our very specific purpose? So as this thing is developed, it can be tailored to serve that purpose.
Well, sometimes I think that isn't a good thing. Sometimes I think it goes
Well, then,
into other directions.
fine.
I think there is
If
also.
you want a free float, that's fine, but then I'm not going to engage in this discussion, because I don't want to go through everything we went through last time.
Well, I mean, yes, there is a certain amount of discovery going on in this.
At this particular point in time, when I started thinking about it and saying I wanted to do this, I thought this, I can see this and how it's going. And as we're discussing all of things, what wastewater comes into it, I've forgotten there was a meeting I wasn't here and somebody talked about nitrogen being flushed in and out of the wherevers. It comes into the fact that I know the marshes is a much sexier thing to talk about than estuaries. That's another thing. So it may be expanding it a little bit in the way you say it is good. It also brings in climate change, which and how we can, using these, we can help keep our sort of saltwater environments that really help buffer us. These are words that our people are beginning to understand. And I don't know how you put it in to get something like this. I also think that with what's going on a little bit at the moment, we should wait until many issues get clarified before we do things, particularly like the fertilizer regulations, might even be wastewater regulations. We have to wait like another 6 months before we see how the town is going.
Right, yeah, but have something, go ahead.
And because those things would be fuzzy in here because we don't know what's going on, but there's some things that I think will be resolved. So it might be that we wait on this and do not do anything particularly in the minute. I also do know that there's things coming up in town meeting where they're going to ask for money for protection of a particular salt marsh.
Janet, also, there are quite a few of the wetlands that were originally salt ponds. The wetlands have been used in the past for agriculture,
I know
for
that.
salt and so on.
I know that.
And so you could point out that the situation's improved enormously. All these things have been turned into regular wetlands. It's informational and it's instructional, and
And the
that
only
should
one
be
that
the
you
emphasis, how it
have
should think, yeah.
that had never been diked, or however you like to call it, for the mosquito control, is actually in Wellfleet Bay. Because if you go to the museum, that's been all diked and
Right.
things like that. And then the other thing that also is interesting, but it's not probably something to put in here, is that over time you actually produce salt marshes and wetlands. Because in Wellfleet Bay, that was called Oyster Bay. It was the best oyster.
Right.
The whole of that salt marsh has developed in the last 100 and something. I don't know the number, don't quote that one.
So I have no problem.
You know, I
This-
think there's quite a lot of stuff that's really interesting that people don't
Right,
see.
right, it's
And
good
you-
information, yeah.
I know that you feel that we have a focus, but if you focus too much sometimes, that's, you know.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you can write something in a limited amount of space without having some sense of what it is you're trying to do. And I guess I don't see that just a general informational brochure about salt marshes in a just generalized sense without a purpose is going to be very useful in terms of achieving anything, in terms of educating people, because I don't know how much they want to sit around and read a brochure just to learn about the salt marsh rather than how they should relate to it, what it means to them. I mean, that's the other thing, I think. For the ponds, we had a very simple message, what it meant to people for the ponds to be remediated because of their appearance, their cleanliness, how it would feel to swim in them. I mean, if we're going to hope to motivate people in some way, I think we have to have a message about what it means to them
Well, that's-
that the salt marshes are being degraded. And I don't mean in the general environmental sense. There are people who are environmentalists, and I'm certain they're very aware of this, and they're not particularly the people we're trying to get to. I think we're trying to get to the average person who hasn't thought a lot about this and wants to know why they should care that the salt marshes have a nitrogen problem or whatever. I mean, what does it mean to them? And I think that's a hook you got to have in order to get people interested and willing to do something about it.
All right, I need to direct the group off to a different subject. We'll continue to talk about it. I have some ideas that I'll send Janet based on the reading that I've done. We're in a building phase. We're positioning ourselves to kind of leverage off other situations that are going on, the 208 process and all that business. So it's prudent that we do this. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the FEMA maps. And what I've done is I've put 4 of them up on this stand.
Jane? Could you take that up to your friends, our friends upstairs?
Away to a-
Thank
away
you
to a-
very
Eliminate
much.
further dietary concerns for the rest of us.
Thank you. All right. The first, okay, the town now has a set of maps upstairs in the health agent's office. And they are from the recent effort by FEMA to update the maps. I think a big thing that to point out, in the once in 100 year flood, the Rotary floods. That whole area
Yep.
floods. And, all right, and that's basically what this little polka dot blue shows. That to me is significant. It's it's also significant that that area down by Dyer Prince on the north side of Rock Harbor, that area floods and is cut off. There's not a landway to get to it.
Is that 100 years? That's much more frequently.
100-year flood,
That flood's much more frequent.
yeah. And I've,
That gets cut off a couple of times.
Which bit gets cut off?
Right down
I
there,
think this is all
along
very
Bridge
interesting,
Road,
but I'm not exactly certain
just
how
before you get to Dyer
it relates
Prince.
to anything that
Oh,
we
right.
can do.
It's cut
yeah,
off, too.
okay, okay. But do know the maps are in, You go to the counter to get them. It's somewhat of the message from the folks at home, I wanted to pass that on. The Rotary floods, Cedar Pond, through that area floods. If you know where, what is it, Susan Chase March up here, that area floods.
Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah, and actually, we would have, according to what's on the diagram, if not the same time, water would flood in from the ocean and in from the bay, and it would be, water would be touching from both sides. It's that much.
Eastham becomes an island.
Yeah. Okay.
Jeremiah's got it.
At the last meeting, there was a discussion of responding to the Conservation Commission's request for our management plan for Herring Pond.
Right.
And you would have sent a letter, was that done?
Roger sent an email to Conscom, and he basically said that the existing version 1 of the pond protection plan is, in fact, that's what the intent of this committee intends that plan to be for Herring Pond.
Have we gotten a response?
Don't know. Roger.
Well, could I ask that you share those emails with the committee?
Sure. Yes, all right, let me write down.
Hmm?
He just sent out the pond.
No, that's the pond protection plan.
Oh.
That's not what he sent to
Yeah.
Conscom.
Oh,
Adele, I'm reasonably sure that was what we decided to do at last month's meeting.
I thought
Yeah, but we
did
didn't
too.
decide what was going to be said or anything. I just think it's appropriate. We certainly get a lot of paper. I think it would be appropriate for us to see the email that was sent in our name to the Conscom
Sure.
and any response that they get, that you get to that.
Sure. No. All right, another topic I wanted to,
And I guess we should know whether or not they have responded.
sure, yeah. All right. I passed out a paper copy of an extract from the final draft of the 208 plan.
Well, this is what I.
So, and it
Because I
basically,
assumed it was a constant.
it-
Sorry.
It is here, okay. The
Oh.
heading was version 1 of the pond protection plan. Well, I thought it was version 1, but
Well,
that's what he
I
used to
doesn't-
send us.
I
Okay.
think that's what he
So
used
we
to send.
do have a copy of it, so what we don't know is whether or not they've responded.
He said, "We appreciate that you continue, so could you please forward this to your respective boards and commission?" So he sent it to Sheila, and we could just go down. So I think he's satisfied sending it.
No,
Yes.
he wasn't supposed to send it, that wasn't what he was supposed to do. So I gotta read all this privately.
Well, you must have it.
Can you update the plan? Could you? No, this is not it. At the meeting, you weren't at the November, yes, you were at the November meeting. There was a discussion, it's mentioned in the minutes, of responding Conscom's orders of conditions on the Herring Pond alum treatment. Required us to establish a management plan for Herring
think-
Pond.
I thought that that's what they decided was the management.
Yeah,
plan.
but he has to say that specifically to
Oh,
Conscom,
you
sending them a plan and not saying.
Oh, you mean you have to say this is to satisfy?
Well, they've asked us for a management plan, they've seen the pond protection plan all along, so they apparently didn't read it that way. And the point was made that we would send them a communication saying that we believe the pond protection plan constituted a management plan for Herring Pond.
I think that's
Yeah.
missing out of this email.
well,
That's not in that email.
it isn't?
It says
Okay, I'll look into it, but I thought those words were in there.
Not what I just read. Now, you may see, you may be another email, I don't know. That's the one management, that's the one Janet showed me, the one that sent out version 1.
But I think, I agree that it doesn't specifically say this is in request for your, whatever the word.
If it doesn't specifically say it, it doesn't say it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
different from distributing the plan. We've got to tell them that if we think so, I don't think so. But if the rest of the committee believes that is a management plan for Herring Pond, we've got to tell them that. And that's what we agreed we would do.
Why are we
at the last
involved in
meeting.
this? I thought the town was doing this.
No, we requested the grant for the alum treatment. And so we are subject to their orders of condition, which ask us to provide them with a management plan for Herring Pond. We are technically the grantee, I guess.
I don't have any
Well.
other stuff.
It's in the November minutes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow this thing.
All right, so basically, at the next meeting, since it's Roger's action, I'll ask Roger to be prepared to inform us as to status of where we are on that. In other words, has he received a response back?
Or has he sent an email?
Um,
I mean, now it's quite, unless you're talking about a different email.
Well, I don't have a clear memory of that. I know I've received an email from Roger. I thought it read very nicely, and I thought it solved the intent that we had at last meeting. But if you say it doesn't, okay.
Not that one. I don't know if there's another one, but not that one, not what Janet has. I'm not saying that what you saw didn't do it. Janet showed me the email that Roger used to simply circulate version 1 of the pond protection plan to Sheila and all the other committees.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
not.
email
that's
does not do it.
I agree.
Okay, if
That's
there is
about it.
another email, then I reinstate
I
my
don't think
request
I don't
that
think-
that you copy that other email to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
rest of us.
Yes, ma'am. That'll happen.
I think
And then
that was
find
it.
out whether there's a response.
Yes, yes, yes.
So am I to understand, we asked for an order of condition, or
We
did
don't
the
know.
town ask for an order of condition?
Well.
Nobody did.
When,
The
when,
Conservation Commission imposed it.
for Herring Pond, before we had done the alum treatment, we'd gone to Conscom and notified them that that was a plan that we had. And as I understand it, Conscom has a position that they asked for a management plan for Herring Pond as an appropriate thing
Who
to
asked for
have.
the order of conditions?
We did. Well,
We're entitled to ask for
Well-
orders of
No,
conditions?
no,
What
we
is
didn't.
it?
the town, it was the town.
Marcel, we didn't ask for an order of condition. We had to get a permit from the Conservation Commission to do the alum treatment. And
So who's "we"?
Well, it's a town act.
It's the town, so what are we doing here?
I don't know that the
Well-
Why don't the
town-
towns, let the town worry about the management plan?
We had the grant.
I mean, who are we? We're just an advisory.
I know. However, it is true that volunteer committees do take on work that
We
could be-
advise people. We don't ask for orders or conditions, and we are not liable for fulfilling them.
Good
Well,
point,
I'd have to go
Marcel.
back
I
and
need to
read the
move on to the next topic.
Okay.
I need to
so
move on
let's-
to the next topic.
Okay, that's okay, as long as it's clear here that we're just
okay.
meandering.
All right. I have passed out on a piece of paper a listing of the recommendations that are in the final draft 208 plan. And it is for your information, and Adele, I passed out a paper copy at the November meeting, but we didn't get a chance to discuss it.
Is it the fact sheet?
Diesel generator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't worry.
Yes, the fact sheet, okay. I passed out a paper copy at the last meeting. And Adele specifically asked that we cover these points, and I think we have some time before
asked?
we close. Yeah,
What are you talking about?
well, I have a note from the last meeting that you noted that we hadn't discussed them, although I had passed out a paper copy of it. And
Charles, I have no idea what you're talking about, because I would never have asked that we specifically.
okay, all right, I
know what-
don't need to have it done, other than the group. Please know, on this piece of paper is all of the specific recommendations that the Cape Cod Commission has in their 208 final plan. And they go both up and they go down. They talk about wastewater management agency. And they talk about a combined process for doing an environmental review of the various initiatives that the towns would have as a result of a need to do some more work because of the nitrate pollution. So, okay, the last one I have then is we've got the draft minutes. If no one has any questions on that,
I have a motion to accept them as they were written. We reviewed them earlier. This is
And I
for the
will
November
second that.
meeting, right?
all right.
You need to add another P.
Yeah, I will.
It's a little typo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And,
It's okay. Only God is perfect.
that's all right. And,
An occasional typo is perfectly acceptable.
Except then I didn't understand what 2 Ps were standing for, or was it 3 Ps were standing for? So only
Okay.
2 Ps were defined.
right. And Adele, I can tell you that Wheeler only has one of the double Es that you
Well,
have.
I am gonna check the spelling, because I also have to check Stern. I'm
Yeah,
not certain that's the right way to spell it.
S-T-E-A-R-N.
Looks
Well,
great.
that's a common way, but I think they spell it the uncommon way, so that's why I have a little note that says check spelling.
oh, okay, one more thing, I just, okay.
Did we vote on accepting them, or?
Oh, excuse me, you've got.
I got a motion.
You've got a motion on the
I
floor.
second.
No, it's already seconded.
Oh,
Okay, good for you.
Well done.
So, all those in favor? Say aye. No, okay,
Okay.
that's 5-4. We're adjourned, thank you very much.
Wait.
wait.
That was a
didn't get
motion to accept the drafted minutes,
That
not
was-
to adjourn.
Now you,
But if
now,
you'd like
Mike,
to
now.
include that.
Now you can do that.
Okay,
Okay, so Merry Christmas or what?
Yeah,
so I hear a motion to adjourn,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
seconded?
okay.
All right, no discussion, all those in favor? Aye,
Aye.
5-0. Good.
Merry Christmas.
Merry